Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government and Licensing Committee. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to now call meeting number 22 to order. Today's meeting is being held by video conference as usual. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. As City Hall remains closed, the public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. The city clerk's staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Licensing Committee's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. We do have deputants on items number 2 and item number 10. Ask for everyone's patience if we experience any delays or technical problems during the meeting. To the committee members, the city clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are also available to everyone remotely if they have an issue with their devices. I'd like to remind city staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as the chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate and vote on items. Members, also please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure your video is turned on. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I'll then create a speakers list and we'll call on members when it's their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, ask members to ensure they keep their video on and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Committee members, I want to remind you, you must still submit and approve your motions by email. This can be done by email at gglc@toronto.ca for motions. If there's any visiting members of council attending the meeting today, I please ask for you to turn on your video so I know you're present and can make sure you have the opportunity to question staff or to speak on any given item. This will also encourage the city clerk staff to record attendance for the meeting. I would like to acknowledge that although we're in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of conflict of interest under the Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, we will now proceed through the agenda. Can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our meeting for March 29th, 2021? Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? Carried. Members, we will now proceed to review the items on the agenda, starting with GL 22.1, the largest property tax debtors with tax arrears greater than $500,000 as of December 31st, 2020. Does anybody like to hold this item? No. Can I have somebody move the recommendations?
I'll move the recommendations.
Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? Carried. Number 2 is business license deferral program review. There is a registered deputant for this, so we will hold that one down. Number 3 is the administrative penalty system 2020 activity. The recommendation is to receive this for information.
No, Mr. Chair, may I hold that, please?
Yep. Councillor Holyday is holding number 2. Sorry, number 3. My apologies. All right, number 4 is the 2020 annual report parking enforcement unit parking ticket issuance. Would anybody like to hold this item? Would somebody like to move the recommendation on this item? Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Carried. Number 5 is the Administrative Penalty Tribunal Chair's 2020 Annual Report. We have a motion to receive the report. Would somebody like to move it? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? Carried. Number 6 is the grace period for permit parking and the city's administrative penalty system. There's a receipt motion before us. Would someone like to move it? Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Carried. Number 7, 1684 Queen Street East, designation of the property used by Shelter Support and Housing Administrative as a municipal capital facility. This is in Ward 19. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Filion. All in favor? Carried. Number 8 is 209 Mavity Street, Community Space Tenancy Lease Agreement and Municipal Capital Facility Designation for the Four Villages Community Health Center located in Ward 4. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Carried. Number 9, 2445 Lakeshore Boulevard West, Municipal Capital Facility Designation for Storefront Humber Incorporated for a portion of the property in Ward 3. Would somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Mantas, all in favor? Carried. Number 10 is the 2050 Finch Avenue West City acquisition of property from Metrolinx for development of a community hub and a center for the arts. This is being held for speakers. Number 11, expropriation of a portion of 50 Alma Avenue for the West Toronto Rail Path, Stage 1. This is in Ward 9. Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Carried. Number 12, award of negotiated request for proposal Ariba document number 262-555-2649 to various suppliers for the provision of custodial services at various City of Toronto locations. Somebody like to hold this? Moved by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? Carried. Number 13 is amendment to non-competitive procurements for fire and life safety vendors. Can I have a motion to move the recommendations if nobody wants to hold it? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? Carried. Number 14 is a project update on the redevelopment of the St. Lawrence Market North in Ward 13. Can I have somebody move the recommendations if there's no hold? Councillor Mantas, all in favor? Carried. Number 15, amendment to non-competitive blanket contract number 470-19692 with Energy CAP or CAP Canada Incorporated for utility bill processing service. Somebody like to hold this? If not, would somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Holiday, all in favor? Carried. Number 16, non-competitive contract with Cornerstone On Demand Incorporated for the city's enterprise learning management system and online learning.
Hold, Councillor Filion.
Councillor Filion would like to hold number 16. Okay, held in Councillor Filion's name. Number 17 is the closeout of the Financial Planning Analysis and Reporting System, better known as FPARS project. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Mantas, all in favor? Carried. Number 18 is accountability policies, procedures, and enforcement guidelines to support the future purchase of proprietary IT software and systems. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Holiday, all in favor? Carried. Number 19 is the Union Station Revitalization Project Status Report.
Just on a point of order on that, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Councillor Holiday?
I don't need to hold it for questions, but I noticed that a citizen had written in a communication, Mr. Crawford, and I wondered if we could ask the clerk to forward that email to Pat Matozzo, the executive director of CREM, because we don't need to use the floor to answer those questions, but perhaps the executive director can answer those directly to the citizen.
Okay. Mr. Matozzo, I believe you're on the line. Can we take that as direction? Pat?
Sorry,
Sorry,
Mr. Chair. Absolutely.
That's okay.
If the clerks can send it to me, I can address the questions on behalf of the resident.
Okay, thank you. Is that fine with you, Councillor Holiday?
Splendid, thank you. I'm prepared to move the recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations in number 19, Union Station Revitalization Project Status Update. All in favor? And that is carried. We will now go back to item number 2. Item number 2 is our business license deferral program review. We have one registered speaker, Mr. Tim Labrinos. Is Mr. Labrinos on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Labrinos. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. We do have your slide presentation the clerk is going to put up for everyone to see. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. From there, at the end of the 5 minutes, each member of the committee is allowed up to 5 minutes to ask you questions. Once the questions of yourself are done, each member of the committee has up to 5 minutes to ask questions of city staff on this item, and then we debate it after that. Sorry, Matthew.
Mr. Chair, we had prepared to have the speaker's slides available for the members as he had requested. Those
Yes.
are available on CMP. We had not prepared to present the slides, but they're there for the members to follow along. Okay.
My apologies. So, Mr. Lambrinos, the members can see your slide deck on what's called the clerk's meeting portal, but they won't be up for the general public to see.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
sorry, Mr.
Yep. I was going to say that I'll go through my presentation and just refer to the screen number as I go by it.
Okay, perfect. And sorry, Councillor Holiday, you had a point of order?
Sorry,
I was just going to confirm, Chair, that I've got them in front of me.
Okay, perfect. Matthew?
It does look like we could display them. We were just getting ready behind the scenes here, but we could have them on the screen when we go, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. All right. If you want to go ahead and do that, Matthew, that'd be great. Okay, Mr. Labrinos, you have 5 minutes. You can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with screen number 1, which is why this item is. Screen number 2 is a map of the City of Toronto showing that the 5 existing adult entertainment clubs are only in the downtown core. Screen number 3 lists their annual license fees, and the one in particular is for entertainers renewal, which is $294.11, and along with the designated manager. Screen number 3 wanted to let you know about the City of Toronto Act. In a business licensing section, it mandates cost recovery for the recovery of license fees. So a city can only charge a business, occupation, or trade under health and safety, nuisance control, consumer protection on what it costs to enforce that bylaw. Okay, I'm on screen number 5, staff report, page number 2. It refers to the licensing fees that are mandated not as cost recovery, but as revenue and cash flow. This is by the Chief Financial Officer, and there's no question that the 2021 licensing fees haven't got the right value. The report states on page 2 that all licenses that if they are paid in full, there'll be no financial impacts. But what I note, Mr. Chairman, is that this report was not reviewed by the city solicitor. Screen number 6 on staff report, page 1, it identifies that adult entertainment clubs were never categorized as non-essential, but they most certainly, Mr. Chairman, did experience a major loss of value for their license, while they maintained a legal requirement to hold an inactive license. In essence, the city is requiring that a licensing fee be paid for clubs to be open when they've been told they can't be open. Screen number 8 on staff report, page number 1. The staff are not recommending an application-based program fee for all businesses. The reason is it's the amount of city resources that would be required. However, I want to make the request today for the industry. There's only 5 existing clubs, and the city's resources would be there to facilitate this review. Mr. Chairman, I'm the only speaker today. There are 7,000 bars and restaurants, and I can understand that, but there's only 5 clubs here that they're making this request. Screen number 9, the staff report on page 2. The staff report recommends the industry consider the province of Ontario grants to pay for their licensing fees, but I've received already written reply from the province that the adult entertainment industry is ineligible for these supports. And I note that none of the grants that were identified in the staff report specifically support paying for municipal licensing fees. The examples provided were energy bills, etc. Screen number 10. The reality is, Mr. Chairman, that the clubs were not open for the majority of 2020. They were only open for 140 days in 2020 and closed for 225 days. Screen number 11 shows that at 62% that it was closed and 38% open. Screen number 12 is more of an illustrative graphic showing it was open 140 days. Screen number 13 specifically talking about the Fillmores and how they were, their license fee is not from January to December, it's from April 1st to March 31st. So they were only open 84% of the time. Screen number 14 shows 84% open, 16% closed. And the graphic on 15 shows that they were only open 15 days during their yearly license fee. Screen number 16, I'm almost finished, sir, is the fact that there were 91 days at the end of the year, which equal 25% of the year, where the clubs could have been opened as a bar or restaurant. They could have done other pivoting. However, the city solicitor made that determination, unlike the rest of Ontario, that they shouldn't be allowed to be open at all, even for a bar or restaurant, which was not the correct interpretation. And in this case, I point out the Ontario Attorney General was not contacted for clarity. My last screen, Mr. Chair, is that the staff report was not reviewed by City Legal, and I'm making a request today that there's only 5 clubs in the industry, and in particular for the women that work as entertainers and the managers who have all been hit hard with the industry, that those licensing fees, their annual fees, be reviewed by city staff. That's my request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lambrinos. Does anybody have any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Lambrinos. We appreciate your time for your deputation this morning. Does anybody have any questions of staff on this item? Councillor Nunziata.
Maybe we can have staff comment on the deputants as far as legal reviewing the report.
Okay, thank you. Are there staff from either legal or MLS that can comment?
I'll start, and perhaps MLS can follow up. What I can say is we have seen this report. Just because it doesn't say that we've reviewed it doesn't mean we haven't been involved in the drafting of the report. And in particular, the fees that have been set have been set for a long-standing time and do reflect, to my understanding, the costs that are typically associated with the enforcement and administration of this particular license category. And Carlton, I'm not sure if you wanted to add a little bit too.
Not much further to add other than these fees, and all our fees were reviewed by a third-party consultant in 2018 and are commensurate with cost recovery and commensurate with other municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nunziati, do you have further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Speakers on this item? Seeing none, is there somebody who'd like to move the recommendations? Councillor Villion is moving the recommendations. All in favor? And that carries. Councillor Holiday, you held down. Our next item is number 3, the Administrative Penalty System 2020 Activity Report. I was held down by Councillor Holiday. Councillor Holiday, do you have questions of staff?
I do. Thank you, Chair. In one of the attachments, and if you just bear with me, Chair, while I just flip through the screens here, there's a table that goes through the penalty amount. It's attachment number 1. I noticed that under parking 3-hour limit, the penalty amount is $15 as listed. And I wondered if staff could tell me what the status is of Council's May 2019 request to increase that amount to $30.
It's Casey Brendan from Revenue Services. Councillor Holiday, thank you for the question. And through you, Mr. Chair, there was a request that was made some time ago to increase the fine level on that particular fine. And what we will normally do in the circumstances is do a comparison. We do annually compare Toronto's fees to other municipalities' fees. Now, on this one in particular, I'm going to ask Anthony Fabrizi if, in fact, Anthony, you are available to answer the question, if you recall whether there was consultation done with Toronto Police or Toronto Parking Authority. I see Anthony is on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Casey, and thank you, Councillor. In fact, what we did is we reviewed the fine levels with the Ontario Traffic Council, and we had originally, just prior to COVID coming on board, we were preparing a report to move it up slightly. I believe it was $20 it was going to go to. That seemed to be the norm across Ontario, and given Toronto's attributes, et cetera. And then, of course, with COVID, we've put that on the back burner. Because parking tickets, as you can see, dropped significantly, and there wasn't that 3-hour issue that had existed prior to COVID.
So, Mr. Chair, I wondered maybe we could stand this item down. I mean, I think I'd like to get a deeper update on what's going on with the eventual implementation, or maybe Mr. Fabrizi, you could comment a little bit more. I know council directed that this be done in GL 5.17, and so that was in June of 2019. And I know it takes time to make a change, but if you could let us know a little bit more about the process and the mechanics of that. I have concerns about leaving it for too long. At some point, you know, those need to change. I know the council direction on that was pretty definitive.
Yeah, yes, correct, Councillor. In fact, what we do, to give you a quick update on how that process works, once we have direction from council, we undertake a study, and so we look at a number of things for comparison purposes, other municipalities, and mainly a guide list, if you will, of all municipalities in Ontario to show what the fine levels are across the province. We do take into consideration that comparing Toronto, for example, to Kirkland Lake would not be fair, and therefore we apply different methodologies. So once we've decided on what would be a fair amount to ensure that the compliance is achieved, there's a report that comes back to council. There's once that's approved, then the bylaws need to be changed, and of course there's a process where the actual parking tickets need to be changed because of course the programming has to be updated. And that process could take, at best case scenario, 6 to 9 months. And as I said, we were mid-stride when COVID happened, and it fell apart. But what we can do, we'll commit to undertaking, moving that again and putting that in place. And we're happy to share that with you, either offline or online here.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied if staff will take that direction to follow up with me on the status of GL 5.17. I don't think I need to ask further questions on this report right now, but if I need to, I can write a letter to the committee and get a follow-up report. But perhaps we can just talk about it for now. But I will flag that direction's been given by council. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Holiday, so this is it's a receipt for information report. Do you want to defer it to the next to our next meeting?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will take your thoughts on that as a great idea. If we could do that, if we could refer it one meeting cycle, that'll give me a chance to speak to the staff. And if a motion is required at the time, we'll move it. And if there's no motion required, I'm sure we can receive it at that time.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So my pleasure. At this point, does anybody else have any questions on this item? Seeing none, speakers. So Matthew, can we move a motion to defer this until our next meeting?
Yes, we can. So that would be a motion to defer this item to, I guess, to the May meeting.
Yes.
The only thing that sticks out of my head is that there was a direction earlier to have both this item and the one from the police service considered at the same meeting. You've sort of done that here. The only consideration is whether you want both of those to come back at the same time, or just this one, which is.
I think at this point we just want this one to come back.
Yeah. Understood. Yes. Okay, so that's fine. We will take that as a motion to defer.
Okay. All right. So moved by Councillor Holiday to defer GL 22.4 2020 annual report on parking enforcement unit parking ticket issuance, deferred until the May meeting of General Government Licensing Committee. All in favor? And that carries. And we are now on to our next item, which is GL 22.10, 2050 Finch Avenue West, city acquisition of property from Metrolinx for development of a community hub and center for the arts. We do have a list of speakers. I just want to remind all the speakers that you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Each member of the committee has up to 5 minutes to ask you questions individually, and then we will bring this item into committee where we will ask questions of staff, and then either visiting councillors, I see Councillor Prutz is on the line, or members of the committee can speak to it for up to 5 minutes. So our first speaker is Mr. Earl Young. Is Mr. Young on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Young. You have 5 minutes. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Probably won't need your 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm Earl Young. I'm a former school trustee for the area of Jane and Finch, founding member of J. Finch Action Against Poverty, and a community photographer. 50 years ago, the shortfalls of the planning of Jane and Finch and our reputation was contrived. In spite of this, a wonderful, robust community has developed with strong social, political, and artistic connections. In Jane and Finch, we have the arts of the world Caribbean, European, African, Asian, you name it, it's practiced here, and much of it led by youth. There's been a lack of support for the arts in the area on all levels, and the history of arts programs failing here. We learned some important lessons from those failures. The San Romano Revitalization Association is a privately controlled social agency on the northeast corner of Jane and Finch. It had a youth-based arts program called Palisades Media Arts Academy, or PIMA, funded for 3 years by Trillium. It employed some of the most talented people in the area. The agency closed the program when staff started to unionize. There was 1 year's funding left to be spent, and I'm quoting here from CUPE's webpage. In May of 2015, the Ontario Labour Relations Board found that Stephanie Payne and other managers had repeatedly violated Provincial Labour Relations Act by engaging in reprisals against staff who chose to join the union. The board's ruling found Payne's denial of the accusations to be implausible, and that her and her management team's testimony was riddled with inconsistency and contradictions. So the community can't rely and depend on private enterprise for its art support. What about York University, Jane Finch's largest employer? Its radio station, CHRY, had a vibrant community-based itinerary since its founding. Volunteers from the area were recently told that they were not welcome to be part of the station because it was moving to a commercial profile. That's all we need is another commercial radio station. Seniors, youth, and community organizations lost this outlet overnight. So that's York University we can't rely on. The City of Toronto also failed to support our community arts environment when the library locked out the West Side Arts Club Hub, a city-supported program in the York Woods branch basement. The library was simply failed to find a way to work with the community. Over $250,000 of the city put in improvements done to the space for the arts, but it was shut down without warning. What we in the community have learned from these failures is that we can only rely on ourselves, and hence the community control of the government model of this arts hub. It's time that Jane Finch develop a space so that it can sing, dance, paint, and be. I urge you to support our arts hub by approving this land transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Are there any questions for Mr. Young? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Young. Appreciate your time today. The next presenter is Sale Robinson from the Community Action Planning Group. Ms. Robinson, are you?
Hello, Mr. Robinson.
Sorry, Mr. Robinson, my apologies.
Not a problem. It's pronounced Sala. It can get confusing.
Sala. Once again, my apologies again. Sala Robinson. Sala, you have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Just a brief background on myself. I'm a community resident. I was born and raised in Jane and Finch community. I'm a professional artist working in the animation industry. My family are also a collective of artists as well, my wife and my 5 kids. We do art workshops and stuff in the community, working with the primary schools and the elementary schools and such, providing that as an art service. We found through the process that there was a need for art influenced education to be bolstered and pushed a little bit, and on our own journey, we decided to see what would a arts hub look like. What I didn't know was that CAPG, the Community Action Planning Group at the time I wasn't a part of, was looking to get the hub built and designed, and was going through a feasibility study. So when I found out about it, I eventually ended up joining and becoming the co-chair of CAPG. On the side, I found that the ability for this community to grow artistically has a lot of potential, as I've been going with the students and working with the youth in the area, and a lot of the adults and the seniors as well. if they given the opportunity and the platform to do so, I believe they can flourish like I did myself. I did it with a lot of extra effort because those things weren't in positions when I went through my process to get into my career. On the flip side, also I'm in the animation industry, and I've discussed the idea of children being fostered at a young age. We're in a climate now where Black and Indigenous youth are not represented in many industries, particularly entertainment, and there's a push to welcome and invite eligible young people for career paths. But on the industry side of it, there aren't enough training facilities or places where the youth of Black and Indigenous are given the resources to develop themselves in the way that would make them industry ready. And so a big passion for me, and we've expressed in our group, is having a hub that would be able to facilitate that training and the industry sort of opening a door for them of sorts. So that's been my main thing with the hub. It's also a place where we can showcase the history in the community that has had trouble in the past, but has also had a lot of positive, bright, shining moments that I think would help to turn around the narrative that Jane Finch has gained over the years. If we can be able to push that positive lens a little bit more with the development of something like a hub that is pushing the standard of art that is industry quality, and the type of training, if we can invite those kind of things for the youths to sort of get themselves acquainted with what a career in arts can look like. So yeah, that pretty much covers where I'm at. I really encourage that the hub right now, the hub committee that has come together has done a great job of piecing together the things that have needed, of picking up the pieces that CapG had carried on to this point, and have now taken it in a direction that's a lot more stronger, a lot more community.
It sounded something like the other
Sorry, I can stop there. Is somebody else?
Sorry, Mr. Robinson, one of the committee members accidentally turned their mic on.
Okay, no problem. I think I'll leave it at that, though, just in support of the hub organization committee, visibility and transparency, working with the city, and just for the community as a people to be able to steer or help govern the direction of what this hub could do for the community, as opposed to the city doing it for us. I think it would be stronger, and it would have a stronger effect if the community members have their hands in it and are a part of the development process transparently. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Really appreciate your perspective, and thank you for sharing it with us today. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Robinson? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Our next applicant is Deborah Joy Eklov, also from the Community Action Planning Group.
Hello, yes, I'm the other co-chair of the Community Action Planning Group. I moved to a lovely condo at Jane and Finch in 2012 and joined CapG in 2016 when I learned about it at a community consultation meeting. CapG is a group of residents and supporters of the Black Creek Humber who want a strong community and contribute ideas and directions for the developments that are happening in our area. We focus activities on planning for our community to be taking a critical role in positive actions in our community, serving Ontario, Canada, and the world. For over 10 years, CapG had spearheaded and been working together with other organizations and individuals to bring to life our vision for a special community hub and center for the arts, be a special meeting place, a place of excellence, with facilities for all residents, seniors like myself, families, and youth, to meet and be with neighbors, to strengthen, build, and enhance our community. And Salah has given much more details as to the vision of the hub that has been developed over the 10 years. Last summer, the hub organizing committee began to take the lead to acquire the land for this project. Many members of CapG have joined this group and are working on the various committees of the hub, including advocacy, community engagement, and the terms of reference. In my 20 years working as an executive and managing not-for-profit organizations, I have rarely seen the commitment, expertise, and sensitivity that the people in the organizing group bring to their tasks. They are dedicated, hardworking, experienced, and professional volunteers who understand their constituency and want to work with the city in developing the frameworks necessary, in finding the partners necessary to see our hub through to its completion in the best possible way. I thank Councillor Peruso and many people in his office and the city staff for all their work, first with CAPCHI over the years, and now with the Hub Organizing Committee, to support the dream of residents to build this community hub and center for the arts. I ask this committee to support the process and directions motions on the report before you. Thank you for your attention and service.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Are there any questions of Ms. Aklov? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time in your presentation this morning. It's very much appreciated. Our next deputant is Suzanne Hall. Is Ms. Hall on the line?
Yes, I am.
You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I'm Suzanne Hall, and I'm a former councillor in Ward 1 in, of course, the City of Toronto. Back in 2012, I joined the Community Action Planning Group, which is known as CAPCHI, in Jane Finch, because as some of you might know, I was a strong supporter of reinstating the Finch West LRT, and they were working on this, and nothing was happening in North Etobicoke. So I've been with them ever since. Once the Finch West LRT was a reality, we were aware of community benefits and focused on the maintenance facility lands at Jane and Finch, and worked with the city, the councillor, United Way, Trillium, and Metrolinx to obtain the 32-meter setback for a community hub and centre for the arts, which goes without saying is much needed in the Jane Finch community. This work has now reached fruition, and we have the 2050 Finch Avenue West staff report before us, supporting the transfer of the lands by the province to the city for the current Jane Finch community. And as you've heard, the work of the community has passed from CAPCHI to the Jane Finch Community Hub and Centre for the Arts Organizing Committee, of which I became a member as a representative of CAPCHI. I've been totally impressed over the years with the caring, commitment, and hard work put in by the residents of Jane Finch in these two organizations, voluntarily giving an extraordinary amount of their time to have the hub become a reality. You've no idea how much work that was. You could not do better than support the collaboration of the Hub Organizing Committee with the city in developing the framework and seeing this hub through to completion. Nor will you meet a more caring and competent group of individuals who are passionate about this community and to see this through. So I ask that you support the directions motion on the report and thank Councillor Peruzza, his office, and city staff for working on this with the Hub Organizing Committee to make this possible. And we look forward to your support for the staff report and the directions motion and ultimately that of Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. It's nice to hear from you again, and appreciate your comments and your time this morning. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Hall? Seeing none, thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. Our next deputant is Butterfly Sabrina Gopal. Is Ms. Gopal on the line?
Hello, this is Nahom with the City Clerk's office. Yes, that speaker is connected. They just needed to connect their audio. I am now unmuting their mic. Butterfly Gopal, you should be able to speak now. To the chair, I can attempt to troubleshoot with the speaker if you'd like to move on to the next speaker.
Okay, I will do that. Our next speaker is Mr. Tom Rakosevich, our MPP for Humber River Black Creek.
Good morning, members of committee, and thank you for hearing my brief deputation. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and names in this meeting. My name is Tom Rakosovic, and I represent the riding of Humber River Black Creek, and I'm a member of the official opposition. I'm here today to voice my support of this item, and I urge the members of committee to support both recommendations. One, for the City of Toronto to acquire the designated portion of the Metrolinx lands at Jane and Finch, and two, for the City of Toronto to work with the Jane and Finch community in the development of the concept for a future community hub. I've been involved in this project since the beginning, having formerly worked with Councillor Perusa, as well as being a member of CAPG when Metrolinx agreed to transfer the lands at Jane and Finch for a future community hub. And I've seen and felt firsthand how much the community has counted on the creation of the project. When Metrolinx and the government revealed last year that they would be selling the designated lands to the highest bidder, I was shocked and extremely disappointed. The Jane and Finch community mobilized in opposition to this betrayal and were joined by voices across the city and beyond. I thank everyone who fought for the community hub, including the Community Action Planning Group, Councillor Anthony Prutz and his staff, Black Creek Community Health Center, Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty, our Jane Finch Hub, the Hub Organizing Committee and Working Group, and many other associations, groups, and individuals. Throughout that time at Queen's Park, I continued to call for the transfer of the lands to the city and made it a top priority as the new transit critic for the official opposition. And I met with and spoke with Metrolinx and ministry officials continually to reverse their decision and urge them to do better than the government before it. The refusal of the last government to sign off on the deal between Metrolinx and the community led to the situation we found ourselves in last year. Thankfully, that's all in the past now, and our community is looking to the future with great hope and great anticipation. By supporting this item today, committee members here will be taking the very first important steps in making this tremendous project for a community hub at Jane and Finch a reality. I hope that the committee will vote in support of both recommendations and continue to view this project as a priority for the city. This is only the beginning for this important project, and I encourage the city to continue to work with and support the Jane and Finch community to help bring this hub to life and true to the vision of the community itself. The hub represents much needed transformative community infrastructure for Jane and Finch residents and will make a difference in the lives of so many. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rakosovic. It's a pleasure to hear a provincial voice at the table this morning. Does anybody have any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Our next deputant is Samuel Kasidu.
Oh, yes.
Good morning, sir. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Yes, good morning, our leaders. My name is Samuel Kisitu. I am an artist, a certified mental health responder, and a personal support worker. Dear committee members, I am reaching out to you as a community member living in the Jane and Finch Black Creek, where I located a community and purpose for myself in the 1.5 years since I fled Uganda. I am an organizer working with my community, my concerns. I am also a board member of African Caribbean Inclusion Center. I am an active member of Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty. I'm also a member of the Jane and Finch Mental Health Aid Group. I go further to do work with the Toronto Econ, the Ugandan community in Ontario, the New African Canadians, and Dominion Church International, Toronto. I am grateful to be a resident of Jane and Finch area, a place of dreams, and a place of the dreams and the years of community work and advocacy. We are proud to be to see one of the dreams which has come true. The Jane and Finch residents and supporters have successfully secured the land along Finch, between North Finch and York Gate, to build a community hub and center for the arts. As a community, we understand that the city will be holding this land in trust for the development of a community hub and center for the arts. I also have a dream to rebrand Jane and Finch area. This morning, I decided to wake up to advance my actions to present to you the following recommendations and demands for your consideration. Building on the history of work done by the community of Jane and Finch, residents, community leaders and organizers, grassroots groups, community agencies, and other supporters, and recognizing that the community facilities work best when they are developed by, not for the community, we ask for your support on the following community recommendations. The City of Toronto and the Hub Organizing Committee to develop a framework for collaboration for working together within the next 3 months. The City of Toronto to support the Hub Organizing Committee, with defining the phase 2 community consultation process for the project, including scope, timeline, stakeholders, as well as their roles and responsibilities. We ask the phase 2 process we hope that phase 2 process will build on previous work undertaken in phase 1 by the community on the feasibility study, as well as the initial business and governance plans. City of Toronto to support the Hub Organizing Committee to explore potential funding from the city and other sources. This issue matters to me because we need physical spaces, technology, and arts. We also hope that this place will help artists in developing artists and facilities and programs. Develop artists it will be good for artist development, facilities and programs in social justice and arts. To be a place for entrepreneurship and the social enterprise development. It will be a place for community-owned development programs. It will be a recreational facility where gyms, indoor pools, courts, and trainings will be taking place. Be a place for food growing and addressing food insecurity. To be a place for youth safe spaces, programming, and resources for all. It will be a place for seniors programs and other facilities and services. It will address harm and lost communities, community-led spaces, West Side Arts Hub. Will also be helpful. It will be a space. It will be a home for artists, as long as it is a space which is not under surveillance and police.
Sorry, Mr. Kasitsu, could I ask you to wrap up your comments, please?
Yes. Yeah, in my conclusion, we look forward to your support on the community recommendations highlighted in this letter, and that you will be supporting the leadership of Jane and Finch Community Hub and Center for the Arts Organizing Committee to identify a path forward in realizing the vision for the community-owned and controlled space for the Community Hub and Center for the Arts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Does anybody have any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Kasitsu. We really appreciate your time and this morning and your comments. I am going to go back to the one deputy we missed, Butterfly Sabrina Gopal. Is Ms. Gopal online now?
I can.
This is Nahal.
Can
Good
folks
morning,
hear me?
Ms. Good morning, Ms. Gopal. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay. Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can. You have 5 minutes whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you to the members. And also thank you to the folks that have spoken on behalf of the Community Hub Organizing Table and the residents of Jane and Finch. My name is Butterfly. I'm a resident in the neighborhood. I'm a mother, a frontline worker, a community health worker. I'm also a resident member of Jane Finch Action Against Poverty. We're the longest standing politicized grassroots resident-led movement in the neighborhood for more than 12 years. We're made up of over 120 different members in the neighborhood, primarily led by Black and racialized women. We have thousands of followers on various social media. Come on, you all know about us. Listen, I think we also need to back up. This is an amazing opportunity and space that that we've been envisioning for the last 10 years. But there has been a long history of residents organizing and building physical spaces from the bottom up in institutions like the library or in community social services or as storefronts. There's a long history of developing art spaces like Westside Arts Hub, Palisades Media Arts Academy, Ascend, and alternative responses to young people being pushed out of schools with Peach. It's important to recognize the history of bad planning, urban planning. There's a crisis with housing and transit. Our workers are dying on the job during the pandemic. What we're fighting for is not just the community hub and social and a center of the arts, but we're also fighting against gentrification at the same time. We're here to really preserve the past work of residents who built up the identity of this community, as well as the current community that continues to hold all levels of government and their stakeholders accountable for a just and social just community in the Jane and Finch area. We need to recognize that there's been a lot of push and new leadership in the last 15 years in this neighborhood that have been fighting for education, housing, social enterprise, opportunities, hiring locally, and this hub is a part of that fight. We're all committed in working with the city and all levels of the government stakeholders to ensure not just the transfer of the land, but the community use and making sure that it's current community residents that have access to the space and the vision of developing the space. And we expect all levels to work with us. This is a community that has really pushed for the last 10, 15 years and beyond to really visualize a community space like this. The current community centers don't really serve the community's needs, and this is an opportunity to really work with community on the ground who have envisioned this work for many decades. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gopal. Does anybody have any questions for the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time this morning. Our next listed deputy is Mr. Troy Boodoo from the Jane Finch Community Hub and the Center for Arts Organizing Committee. Mr. Boodoo on the line.
Hello,
I'm
this is
looking
with the city clerk's office. They are on the line, and they just need to connect their audio in order to speak. And I can unmute their mic then. Okay, they've connected their audio. I'm now unmuting their mic.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm Troy. I'm the co-chair of the Jane and Finch Community Hub and Center for the Arts Organizing Committee, and I'm also the co-chair of an Economic Opportunities Action Group in Jane and Finch. I'm a longtime resident of the neighborhood and do a bunch of stuff that space. So thank you for the time to speak on this. For my deputation, I just want the goal for this stuff is really to make sure everyone recognizes the important work that has been done by community. When I say community, I'm leaning more towards residents and grassroots groups because their voices are often not heard, but community in this context means our elected officials, the nonprofit organizations in our neighborhood that supports that work. In addition to, of course, the residents and grassroots groups that are often paid and doing this work there. I also want to emphasize the need that when we move forward, we need to have clear, transparent, and formalized agreements. That's a mistake we had it before. We think we need to rectify that harm so we don't have the same issue that we had with Metrolinx. And then to also a goal for this is to ensure that the work continues to be led and stewarded by community, and then support the motion that will be put forward today. And specifically what that is the city works with the Jane and Finch Community Hub and Center for the Arts Committee on developing an implementation strategy, which would include establishing a framework, a collaborative framework, collaboratively work on identifying funding opportunities for the pre-development phase, developing a joint community engagement and consultation strategy, and developing a joint plan for subsequent development phase. And I know our counselor is we've been working with our counselor and the city staff on that stuff, and I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna have that conversation later. The rest of this time I wanna focus mostly on the work that the Jane and Finch community has done here. To get to this phase, it was a lot of work the community had done. And a lot of this work was convincing the various stakeholders that there was a better way for development on this particular land, and why a community hub and center for the arts was important to Finch, to Jane and Finch. This was done by sharing our vision to highlight the talent and innovation and genius of our residents that's often dismissed due to stereotypes and systemic discrimination. But it was also one through exposing the wounds of our community. And it's really important for us to recognize every time people share their stories, these wounds that are often not healed, they're reliving that trauma. And, you know, we really need to appreciate that work and appreciate the emotional toll that you don't see after that story has been told and what that actually means. The work done, it's a lot been driven by passion for community, often unpaid, and in spite of the cost to people's emotional and financial well-being. We're spending a lot of time trying to work on how we could better our neighborhood without seeing any actual reward and really coming at the detriment to people's emotional well-being and their financial well-being. We could all be doing other things, but we're really passionate about this neighborhood. I think the people who dedicate their lives to a community like ours that has often feel like they've been abandoned by everybody else are the real heroes here. So like our residents and all the people who organize and do all this work, they're real strong people that we need to appreciate. Yeah, and this stuff has resulted not only in us exposing the dreams of what our community could look like, but actually tangible things like a feasibility study, thinking through urban planning, developing a business plan, a governance model, and so for exploring these ideas and showing that not only we're visionaries in planning these things, but we have the actual backing to do this work, and we've done this work collectively together. The loss of this land was extremely traumatic, as you could tell from all the work that has happened. And the emotional toll there, but out of that chaos, we've organized and we've worked more closely with the different stakeholders, Metrolinx, the city, continue to work with our counselors, to figure out a better way moving forward. And this is why, you know, we need this working together led by community, because we've been doing this work and we need to appreciate that. This land can be a space to foster and expose the brilliance and vibrance of our residents. But we also have to remember that this land could also be a space that continues the legacies of the problematic history we have. You know, the long ignorance, the cries of residents, the racial inequalities, police brutality, discriminatory hiring practices, education streaming, a whole bunch of things that people have been talking about for years that we have tend to ignore it, but now we're starting to realize that's a thing. It could be either of those two things. We could replicate the harms that have happened, or we could do something that's better. And I believe we could do something that's better if we work better together and collaborative, and we have this led by our communities. So with that being said, I do support what would be put forward, and I open any questions for the organizing hub committee's work that we've been doing thus far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Boodoo? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time this morning. Our next deputant is Sam Tekel. Sam Tekel, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your surname.
No, it's okay. Sam Tekle. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the committee for assembling and convening us and for having us have the opportunity to speak. My name is Sam Tekle. I'm a longtime community worker, teacher in the area. I'm also, I work with Success Beyond Limits, or SBL, which is located out of Westview. I'm also an assistant professor at UFT at New College, and also a member of the Toronto Public Space Committee. I speak to this committee as someone who has grown up, work and struggle in the Jane and Finch area. I'm a proud resident and member, and have nieces and nephews and family that still struggle and live in Jane and Finch and have no desire to leave, no matter what our teachers tell us we should do. I wanted to I had prepared comments, but in light of what's already been said, I wanted to take us back to Thursday, where we had a virtual community town hall that I think our member of provincial parliament also attended. We had over 100 attendees at one point. We had thousands of social media engagements. We had assembled artists of different mediums, different streams, who had told their stories, who are practicing professional artists, who spoke of the difficulty of curating and crafting their practice in the area, right? So in my work with Success Beyond Limits, I work out of Westview. We work with, between 100 and 150 young people, all the way from their feeder schools in Brookview and Oakdale up to high school. We help shepherd them through high school. And for March break, we do a career exploration program, yeah? And we have them, visit workplaces, visit cool buildings and cool structures, and we go around and have fun engagements. None of those spaces are in our community. Unfortunately, we have to go downtown a lot of the times, to see some of the cool structures. And it's jarring for our students to see sometimes the kind of investment that gets done, a couple subway rides or a couple highway rides down than they did at home. Unfortunately, this was the case too when I grew up in the 90s in Jane and Finch, right? So we see a lack of public space, a lack of green space, a lack of really real investment, substantive real investment. And I constantly in my writing or talking, I say that Jane and Finch is not a community without struggle, without its difficulties, but also not by accident. That the kind of things that we're seeing and the kinds of infrastructure that we're trying to catch up to the demand of the people that live there is out of structured neglect and a sustained disinvestment, yeah? So what we observed by Metrolinx in a kind of rash, nonchalant way to break that agreement is kind of what we see a lot of times when you're coming from a community like Jane and Finch. You see that you're never on the political agenda. You see that, let's say, a global pandemic breaks out, whether it's SARS or COVID, that you're always last to get addressed, but the first to take the disproportionate amount of risk. All of these things shows for our young people and our residents that we don't really get a chance to dream, to look forward. But we're also always, as a member of JFAP and members of different kind of groups in the committee, we're always responding to struggle, responding to strike. That changed when Metrolinx said that they weren't going to donate the land for the community center and arts hub. We saw young people mobilize, so students from across the area. We saw co-workers, CAPG, we saw all kinds of collectives, farm organizations who really banded together. And for a moment, demanded and dreamt forward. So while of course I obviously support the two motions before you to have community engagement and stewardship, I want it to be clear that this is not one based on a model of charity, that the Jane and Finch Arts Hub Community Planning Committee comes with lots of breadth and strength. We have a political advocacy committee, we have a community engagement committee, we have a finance committee, we have architects who are rendering designs as their master's thesis. We have a feasibility study on file, right? So it behooves the committee, I think, and this city council more broadly, to take stock of what is available, what kind of talent is in the community, and to adequately sustain and support that. So all that to say, of course, I would like the committee to support that work, but also to think of the Community Arts Hub and the community itself as partners in this process, rather than maybe nuisances or difficult hurdles to jump. That we bring much to the table, and it would be great to work on this together in light of the kind of histories we've had in relationships with various levels of government where we've had to respond in more adversarial or hostile ways. This is an opportunity for us to work together and work better for the future, and perhaps even for once, maybe Jane Finch could be and Black Creek could be the center of the agenda. So thank you for your time. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Teckley. You appreciate your time this morning. Are there any questions of the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time this morning. Our next deputy is Ms. Marianne Hay. Is Ms. Hay on the line?
This is Home with the City Clerk's office. Marianne Hay is on the line. They just need to connect their audio, and it appears that they have now. I will now unmute them.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Good morning, Ms. Hay. You have 5 minutes. I can hear you loud and clear. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. I just want to say thank you to you all for being here, and a huge thank you to the speakers and community members who have shared their stories and insight today. My name is Marianne Hay, and I am a screenwriter and actor from here in Jane Finch, currently working in children's TV. I've also been living in the Jane Finch community with family since I was 3. I'm here to say I'm excited and hopeful for the upcoming Community Center for the Arts, and that I am so grateful for the successful planning, protesting, and advocating community members did to ensure they get input and are involved with the planning for the hub from the very beginning. Growing up here, I know a lot of us in Jane Finch were only encouraged to explore the arts as a hobby and not as a career or something to study in academic or professional settings. There were many arts initiatives and programs put together by amazing, hardworking community members, but none with the right widespread funding or development seen in higher income areas. And as Sam mentioned, a lot of these programs often required transportation out of the area. I went to university for media production, and it was difficult being in a setting where I couldn't really relate to a lot of my peers. I didn't have access to a lot of the same arts training they already had coming in, or could relate to a lot of the content being made. As growing up as a Black young person in the community, I had a yearning to tell stories with a social justice lens. I hope that for this next generation of kids in Jane Finch, the arts are seen as viable to pursue in their own neighborhood, and that this center can be a place where kids can not only have fun and explore their interests, but also have an outlet, and particularly have a space where they can get training in various fields of the arts. Visual arts, digital arts, acting and theater, filmmaking, and more. There is so much that can be implemented and explored. A place where kids can explore these interests, but also feel safe and can go to when they need support and community, and a space where they don't feel pushed out, especially as Jane Finch rapidly gentrifies. I have a 7-year-old sister who has a love for the arts, and she's already confident in saying she'd love to be an animator or a voice actor or a fashion designer, or to have an arts exhibit one day. And I'd love for this hub to be a place where she can make even one of those dreams come true. I hope that the City of Toronto can support this recommendation, and that the city and the hub organizing community can bring to fruition a vision and a solid, trusted, transparent action plan for this community hub and art center, one that is community owned and controlled and supported at all stages. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Are there any questions for the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning. Our last deputy is Mr. Barry Ryder. Mr. Ryder, are you online?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. You have 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so my name is Barry Reeder. I'm a community minister with the United Church of Canada, and I've had the privilege of working in the community for the last 26 years. My role has been to do community development, community organizing, and pastoral support, and advocacy through coalitions and networks. I've seen the earlier development and the birth of this idea at CAPG, of the Community Arts Hub. And they did many consultations and to help shape it and involve the community. In many ways, this has been like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. Part of my role as a community minister is to grieve with the community and provide visuals and funeral support. If you may recall that in 2013, we actually lost 4 youth under the age of 15 through gun violence. One of the mothers of that youth, she's seen this as part of her dream of trying to build a space that was safe and for youth, and as well something that could tap into their incredible kind of resources of who they are and the talents that they have. It was with much shock and horror when we found out that the Metrolinx was going to renege on their commitment and sell the land to the highest bidder. And part of that was negotiating that earlier as part of the community benefits, as was the LRT going through and being built in our community, and the place where the trains could end up being fixed. It was felt that to use some of that space for community benefit. When we organized in reaction to Metrolinx, that created a whole synergy. And in some ways, you know, the old saying that it takes a whole village to raise a child. Although CAPG may have birthed the idea, the Toronto Community, or the Community Arts Hub Organizing Committee, and all the volunteers that have come from that, residents as well as grassroots organizations and community agencies, have put thousands of hours into it so far, and are committed to working with the city through its creation. Not only, I have to say that not only was it shared in Toronto Star about the power of the community working to reclaim that commitment, but across the land, I have colleagues in the United Church that have been watching the story. So I think it's important that we realize that the whole city, or not just the city, but other parts of the country are looking at this opportunity for a community-based initiative that gets by the community, with the community, and for the community. I, too, was amazed at the town hall that took place this last Thursday with about 1,000 kind of residents and the artists and presenting. Marianne, the speaker that was just before me, she actually did a little video of her 7-year-old sister. And her sister was showing how much committed that she is to having an art space. So if we can engage just children, youth, and adults, and all kinds of people, just think of what's going to end up happening out of this. I want to support the 2 recommendations, and also recognize that Anthony Cruzzo has worked tirelessly last week to support the Community Organizing Hub Committee, and that he's got some recommendations to really kind of put more flesh on the bone of this bigger motion that's coming forward to you, and he's going to present that. So I stand in support with my colleagues and residents in the community that you really need to end up make this a reality. And it's a great partnership that the City of Toronto can commit to, and especially in the time of Black Lives Matter. I just need to embrace that. The community, although is very diverse, is predominantly a Black community. And a lot of times we don't have the resources that other parts of the city have. So this is an opportunity to stand with the community and support it the most effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend. I appreciate your time and your comments, and I'm sure your work is very much appreciated in the community as well. Are there any questions for Reverend Rader at the moment? Seeing none, thank you very much, Reverend. At this point, that was our last registered deputant, so we are going to take it back into committee, as we call it, for questions of staff. Councillor Peruzza, do you have any questions of staff?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just really sort of a couple of technical ones. So in the report, there's a reference to 0.5. I've been trying to get this clarified for quite some time, and there's a reference to 0.59 acres, and I've always disagreed with that. As you can see by the map that's provided, it's considerably a bigger site. So did we get some clarity on that? And is there a way to clarify the report?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. It's Pat Matozo, Councillor Peruzza. I'll ask Ryan Glenn or Allison to answer that question to give you more specifics around the actual acreage.
Sure.
Morning, everybody. Through the chair, Councillor, as part of the due diligence process for acquiring property, we will reference plan, our actual reference plan registered on the property, which will clarify the boundaries as well as the overall acreage of the site.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. And the other thing, so here's, I guess, my question as well. The site is currently basically comprised of not just this site, but the entire maintenance storage facility site, 3 parcels. And there's nothing in the report that speaks to how those lands are going to be assembled under, sort of what instruments the land are going to be assembled, and then under which instruments the new lot will be severed, and lastly, the property that we're going to acquire, it's going to be acquired as a fee simple property for the city, correct?
Again, I'll ask, thank you very much, Councillor Prutsa. Through the chair, I'll ask Ryan, who's been actively working on the file, to address your question.
Councillor, it's Alison Pelosi. I can answer that question. Yes, we will be acquiring it by way of fee simple. While the Metrolinx work is undergoing, we'll immediately enter into an easement to allow them to continue their work. And then once that work is completed, we'll get the easement will be released and we'll have full clear title.
Okay. So would it be okay if we asked you to bring sort of even a one-pager to council that speaks to the roughly the size of the site? It doesn't have to be accurate to the sort of to the the last square foot, but to the actual size of the site, and because I also want the folks that have been participated in this meeting this morning, but also the broader community in the sort of in an effort to be completely transparent, for people to understand what it means and how the property will be acquired, and the timelines associated with how you assemble the land, when it can be assembled, when it can be severed, and then when it's ultimately transferred. So can we just get a one-pager to council that as an addendum to this report that speaks to that as well? Because that's not addressed here, and I think that we need to be clear with folks.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Prutsa, Mr. Councillor Prutsa. Through the chair, we can do that because that's it in the appendix B, the terms and conditions. We've got a 5-year runway, so we could definitely put that together for you in terms of timeline. So I just want to be clear that we do have about 5 years of runway in terms of planning this project out before the property then reverts back to the city once Metrolinx has completed their work.
Correct. Yeah, in terms of the lease back. But you know what? I just wanted that to be sort of attached to this report, so people have a clear understanding of the process that we need to still go through in order to actually sort of have that property defined and the size of it. I want that as well before the council meeting. I want to know what we're getting. Okay.
Okay. Not a problem.
And the size of the property. So perfect. Would we need to do that as a motion? Okay, sure. Well, I'll ask one of my colleagues to move it as just an additional report to council before the council meeting, if they can do that. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Prutz. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers on this item? Sorry, Councillor Matlow, do you have questions of staff?
No, just
for speaker. Okay. Okay. Councillor Prutz, as the outside councillor and the councillor for this area, I assume you wanted to speak?
I do. I have a couple of things, and thank you so much for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. I just want to start off, first of all, by thanking a great many people that have been involved in this, not just, CAPG and all of the subsequent community and community groups that have pushed for, articulated for, and developed a plan for this dream that the community has in terms of being able to build a hub and center for the arts at Jane and Finch, and it's so symbolic for us. I also I don't want to. I want to thank the folks that at the end of the day saw the wisdom in the project and have come forward to support us. The government of Ontario, Premier Ford, Minister Mulrooney, Metrolinx, and Mr. Verster. All of these folks have ultimately, have seen the wisdom of this dream and are taking the steps and to make it a reality, and are gifting this land to the community, to the city as the holder, but really to the community for this project. And I want to shout that out and thank them. I also want to thank all of the folks that took the time to speak to us here this morning: Errol, Sarah, Deborah, Suzanne, Butterfly, Tom, Samuel, Troy, Sam, Marianne, and Barry. Again, this has been a very sort of a long process to get us to here, and we have a ways to go, but it's really important to get there. And Mr. Chair, I hope I'm not too late. I have a memo and a motion before you that's very clear in terms of community engagement. Many of the community members spoke to it. I hope that you, Mr. Chair, will take carriage of it and move it on our behalf, or one of the other members of the committee. And the second motion that I would ask one of the committee members to put forward for me is that we ask our staff for a report to council that addresses the three issues that are raised. A, the size, the approximate size of the parcel of land that's being transferred. B, the assembly of the land, given that it's three separate distinct lots currently. And three, the time and the process by which that will occur. It doesn't have to be a big report. A one-pager that speaks to that would go a long way for us to move forward. So, Mr. Chair, this has been a long time in coming. It started for me back in 2008, 2009, when the TTC took steps to expropriate and acquire these lands for the Finch West LRT. The strip that they had reserved back in the early days for a community project of sorts was along Yorkgate. It has subsequently moved. It's along Finch, much better for us. It's time to move forward. The motion that's before you today, Mr. Chair, really is to ensure and reassure the community that this is going to be a collaborative project between the City of Toronto and the community in terms of moving forward and developing not only the framework but the actual dream of the project itself. And that's very important because it can't happen otherwise, and it needs that community infusion. It needs those ideas. It needs that energy in order for it to work for the entire community. With that comes responsibility, and I believe that we have the depth of talent and capacity in the community to pull this off. So I hope you support those motions. One of the things that I learned through this ordeal, and one of you is probably going to say, "Oh, geez, Anthony, you learned something new." I apologize for the phone. You learned something new, having been to where you've been and as long as you have. But yes, I did. I learned through this project that Jane Finch has friends, not just across the City of Toronto, not just across the province of Ontario, not just across the country of Canada, but it has friends everywhere. Why? Because we are a first settlement type community. People come here, they live here for a while at Jane and Finch, then they move on. They move on to do, to carry on with their lives. And many of them very, very interesting lives. We have a York University, a Seneca College, right at Jane and Finch, people who come here from all over, study here, and then go back to their neighborhoods and their communities. What I learned through this exercise, and when the government decided that, it might do something different with this benefit that they had committed to us, was this outpouring of support that came back into the neighborhood from the friends of Jane and Finch, not just within this community, but really from everywhere. We heard from people everywhere. And the government heard from people everywhere. And that was just simply amazing. That is something new that I have learned, that we are not alone. And we are not just about the people that live here, but we are sort of a community that has tentacles everywhere. And that was amazing to see and amazing to learn. And I know that as we go forward, and I thank you very much for the additional minute and a half that you've given me, Mr. Chair. But I think it needs to be said, as we go forward, we have nurtured these relationships, and we're going to continue these relationships, and we're going to build together a magnificent project in this neighborhood. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the intervention this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Perruzza, and thank you for the care and interest that you're showing in your community. I'm sure it's very much appreciated. We'll now bring it into committee for speakers. I saw Councillor Speaker Nunziata's hand first, and then Councillor Matlow. Speaker Nunziata, 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will move the recommendation in the report, and as well as the motions that Councillor Perruzza has brought forward. I want to thank the Jane and Finch community for coming forward this morning and making the deputations. I did meet with them a couple weeks ago, a few of the committee members, but I think this is amazing what the community has been able to do in the past few years. And I know Councillor Perruzza, it's been very challenging, especially working with Metrolinx, but I had a similar issue in my ward, as you would recall, at Weston and Lawrence, where Metrolinx closed John Street in my ward, and we had some land along the corridor. And what we did at the time is that we negotiated with Metrolinx, and Urban Arts did a feasibility study in Weston and Lawrence on possibly a cultural hub at 22 John Street. And it was very successful. We did a public and private partnership, and Metrolinx did support the community, and we were able to get some land on John Street. And right now, and this was a project with Artscape, right now we have Urban Arts that is doing a number of programming at 22 John Street. We have Shakespeare in Action as well. Urban Arts has been able to work with all the youth in the community on art programs. It's been amazing what we've been able to do at this cultural hub, this arts hub. And it was only with the support of the community and Metrolinx in the city that we were able to make this happen. And of course, at the time, there was some opposition to it, but we made it happen. But it took a while for us to make it happen. And now it's amazing, the programming that we're doing out of this facility and the number of youth, not only at the Weston Lawrence area, as well as the Falstaff community as well. We have Frontlines as well that does programming out of the cultural hub. So I want to thank the community for forming the committee and working together. It's very important that it's community driven. And thank you to Councillor Perruzza for working with the community and bringing this forward today. This is an amazing project, and I support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Nunziata. Councillor Matlow to speak.
Mr. Chair, I want to agree that Councillor Perruzza has been a consistent supporter of the Finch LRT, even while there were neighboring councillors like former Councillor Mamalidi and others who put every obstacle in his way to do the right thing, the honest thing, and to support his community. And he's shown this again with his consistent support for the Community Hub and Arts Center. So I want to congratulate Councillor Perruzza for navigating this and helping this dream come through to fruition through a really complex process that was not created to be easy for communities. I want to acknowledge the community itself. They are inspiring. This would not be happening if it wasn't for the local residents who, even though there is a history of bad urban planning in the Jane and Finch neighborhood, it is a community because of the people. And the people have come together and they have not allowed anyone or any organization to put them aside, to ignore them, or to get in their way. They've been able to take a stand and successfully drive this idea forward to a point now that we are about to move it forward with them and on their behalf. It's one of these great examples of where it is not we doing something with the support of the community, but it's we supporting the community because of their efforts. So I want to congratulate them for such a grassroots-led initiative, their determination, their commitment, their skill, and their acumen. This is a neighborhood that has a bad reputation because that reputation has been tarnished over and over and over again unfairly. It's because we collectively have not invested enough into the youth, into the community, into social services, into the resiliency that the community has demanded for years. So now they're taking the lead and they're demanding it themselves, and we are supporting them. I believe Jane and Finch is on the rise. I believe that this, if we look back in a few years, we're going to look back and go, this is a vibrant, safe, and healthy community, but it's because of the work that the community has done, and it's because they have representatives like Councillor Perruzza, who will be with them every step of the way to make sure that their dreams are realized. I'm really happy to support this effort. And again, I just want to reiterate, I am so deeply inspired by the work of this community. This is how you get things done. And you're showing that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Other speakers from the committee on this item? Seeing none. So we do have the recommendations in the report, and we have two motions that Speaker Nunziata is moving on behalf of Councillor Perruzza. I think we can take them as a package. Is that okay, Matthew? Okay, all in favor of the three motions?
Mr. Chair, can we just see them on screen briefly for those folks that are watching the meeting, the proceeding?
Why don't we ask for a recorded vote, actually, given just the importance of this vote?
Sure. Okay, so let's start with Matthew. Can we get them on the screen, please? And if somebody could mute their mic, I can hear a telephone ringing. That is the first motion. The second motion. There's the next. That's motion number one. Okay. So we've been asked for a recorded vote. So all in favor of the recommendations as a package? Councillor Manses, Speaker Nunziata, Councillor Filion, Councillor Matlow, Councillor Holiday, sorry, Deputy Mayor Holiday, and myself. That's unanimous, and that passes. And then so we have one last item. We are going to go back
Mr.
to...
Mr. Chair, before I go and you go, thank you also very much for the overwhelming vote this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Prutza. Keep up the great work on behalf of your community.
Thank you.
At this point, members, we are just going to go back to item number 3, the administrative penalty system, which we deferred to next month. Councillor Holiday, I believe you got your answers that you were looking for, and you're moving to reopen this item.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for clarity, appendix number 1 on the park for 3-hour fine lists $15, but that actually changed from 2019 to 2020. Now there's 2 columns on the table, and so that number was referring to column number 1. So thank you to staff for doing some quick research. They were able to determine that indeed the fine did change, and so there's no need to revisit this.
Okay, all right, thank you, Deputy Mayor Holiday. So Deputy Mayor Holiday is moving a motion to reopen GL 22.3, the administrative penalty system 2020 activity. All in favor? Carried. And then Deputy Mayor Holiday is moving the recommendation that the General Government and Licensing Committee receive this report for information. All in favor? And that item carries. Matthew, I believe that's all our business for today.
Number 16, Mr. Chair.
Yes, there was one.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Filion held an item down.
Yeah.
Yeah, my apologies.
Item 16.
Councillor Filion, item number 16, which is, sorry, just scrolling through. Almost there. Item number 16, non-competitive contract with Cornerstone On Demand Incorporated for the city's enterprise learning management system and online learning. Councillor Filion, you held this item. Questions of staff?
Yes, thank you. So first of all,
sorry about that.
I had some difficulty understanding the report. So as far as like what this is, we're being asked to approve the you know, I see language like this integrated technology solution will support the city's transition to a holistic talent management approach, enable data and analytics capabilities to align learning and development resources to identified employee requirements. Can somebody tell me what all of that means?
Through the speaker, it's Alma Kenton. I'm happy to answer the council's questions. So up until now, the city has had the Cornerstone On Demand almost exclusively as a learning system. So employees can go onto the system and take courses, virtual courses. As a result, I mean, as we are modernizing the city's processes, we're now moving away from the system just being about learning and courses. So things like the city has a performance management system program that has all been paper-based to today. So employees fill out on paper what their objectives are for the year, and then they do performance reviews based on those objectives on paper. So now we're moving all of those things that are part of the city's talent management system we're automating all of it. So it's not just about taking courses. It's also going to be development plans for employees. It's going to be a succession management program, which the city does not currently have. All of those things are being enabled through this system. So that's the reference to the talent management program, that beyond learning, it's a bit more, it's more comprehensive and bringing on automating some of the processes that are currently manual. Sorry, Councillor, you're muted, I think.
Hello, this is Nahum with the City Clerk's office. Councillor Fillion appears to be unmuted, but we cannot hear him. Councillor Fillion, I will connect with you in WebEx chat.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can ask a couple of questions while we allow the clerk staff to try to connect to Councillor Fillion.
Sure. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Holliday.
Thank you. I wondered through you to staff if someone could talk to me a little bit about the business case to stay with the existing vendor. I guess, and I lost the spot on the report here, but I read that the project panel recommended that we stay with the existing system while we think about what the future of the system could or will be, and whether it goes to SAP, which is one of our enterprise systems, or if we go to the market. And maybe we could get to the point of the business case that said it's better, and I'm assuming that means cheaper, to stay with what we've got right now for a period of time.
Through the speaker, I'm happy to answer that question. Yes, you're correct that one of the reasons why we're proposing staying with CSOD is because it is cheaper. The city invested quite a significant amount of money in the project in the original process of implementing the current system. And so there would be a significant capital cost investment in a project cost if we were switching right now. But then beyond that, there are also business reasons to stay the course. As you can imagine, through the last year, we have relied on the system even more heavily. I can tell you, for instance, that we've just recruited over 1,000 people to support the immunization clinics. Those people are being trained exclusively on the system. And so there's lots of reasons why during the pandemic, it also makes sense for us to stay the course. Many divisions, about 29 of them, are using the system also for their division-specific training, including water for water treatment-related training, long-term care homes, a number of divisions. So switching to another system right now would mean all of that, the costs associated and the change management of moving everybody onto a new system. So there are quite a number of reasons. And then the other reason is, the research also indicated that CSOD continues to be a leader in this field. And so based for all of those reasons and to the cost savings as well. And finally, another important point is success factors, which you know the city implemented a number of years ago, SAP success factors, which we implemented in 2019, is a competitor. However, that system is still in the stabilization phase. So it is quite possible that should we migrate, it might make some sense to move our learning and talent management also onto success factors, but it's early days. We're still in the process of stabilizing the existing functionality in success factors. So this is also not a good time to move for that reason. So the hope is another couple of years would allow success factors also to be stabilized, which means we will have many more options open to us at that point, including the cost savings you mentioned. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. I had two follow-on ones. I found the spot here on page 4 of the report, the bottom paragraph. It says that we would continue the current LMS platform with Cornerstone On Demand for an additional 3 years, plus 2 optional 1-year renewal periods, and then explore the potential to go with SAP SuccessFactors or proceed with an open market call. Can I safely assume, though, that we're not going to wait till the end of the 5 years to come back and make a decision? Is it a safe assumption that we're working on this now to think about what the next gen is? My concern is I don't want to have another report before us that says we're going to single source because we weren't ready in time. I understand if there's reasons why it may not be advisable to migrate, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not sitting on our hands over the next number of years, not thinking about what the next step is, because that time is required to develop the solution, is it not?
So the speaker, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And I can assure you that we are already starting to look into that. In fact, we started that process in 2019, which is what brought us to this point, that we started the exploration of other options. So that work will continue. We have no particular ties to CSOD other than they are a vendor right now, and it makes sense to stay the course for all the reasons we've talked about. But we certainly want to go to market and to look at what options are available. And so our intention is to come back to this committee to start the process well in advance to allow us to have all of the options available to us.
Finally, my last question is, and it's probably generic to all sorts of systems, but can you tell me how critical a learning management system is to the city's business? I suppose at first blush, one may look at that and say, well, you know, it's about training. You know, if we didn't have this for a period of time, would it really matter? But perhaps you could advise the committee if it is critical to our business or to compliance. And saying that, do we have a backup plan if we no longer had a relationship with the vendor? Could we manage this in some way? Maybe not optimally. Do we have a plan to replace the system if we had to?
Thank you, Councillor. So on the question about how important this is to the city's business, I would say it's critically important. A lot of our training, compliance-related training, including for a number of children's services, all our businesses are done now on the system. It was critical before. It is even more so. Over the last year, the team has worked really hard to transition more and more learning onto the platform, including buying additional content. So things like our human rights obligations, all of those obligations, for instance, the cybersecurity training was something that we rolled out and were able to roll out very quickly upon identifying that as a risk area for the city on the system, because we had a system that we could leverage very quickly. So it is critically important to the city that we use the system, and it is even more so now given the climate that we're in and the continuing risk of getting people together, because that would be the alternative is to do in-person learning, and it really is going to be quite some time before it becomes advisable for the city to do that as a way to train staff. In addition, the question about what the alternatives might be, as I said, the primary alternative will be in-person learning, which is less than optimal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Thank you, Deputy Mayor Holiday. Councillor Fillion back online.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Fillion.
Sure. So back to Wilma. So if I understood the first answer you gave, we are moving to doing things like performance reviews and succession management online. Did I understand that right?
That's correct, Councillor.
And is that, I certainly understand during the pandemic, we've had no choice to do that, but is that seen as a good thing or just a temporary thing because of the pandemic?
Through the speaker, that is, through the chair, that is a good thing because it allows us to roll up to do critical analysis of the data in a way that we haven't been before. So we can find out, for instance, are there divisions that are not setting objectives for their staff? Are there divisions that are not having regular performance-related meetings with their staff? Those are things that we couldn't do before when it was manual. So but for the pandemic, we would have needed to move these things to an automated fashion so that we could set objectives and we could be more intentional in ensuring that the organization is actually complying with some of these things. So the pandemic has definitely forced our hand, but this is part of the city's modernization effort in any event.
Okay, so you weren't planning to move back to in-person for a lot of these functions. Okay. Then my main question has to do with the how much were we paying for this under the current contract, and how does that compare to what we're being asked to approve now?
So in terms of what we're paying right now, as I said earlier, the primary, over the last several years, that the system has been used mostly for learning. So comparing apples to apples, we're paying about the same year over year, about $380,000 to $400,000 for the learning system. So the additional costs that you see reflected there are the additional modules, including additional learning. So there was a report at the DLC last year where we procured additional learning. So a good about 300,000 of that is additional learning, things that we would have, so it was money that we would have spent, but we would have spent it in in-person courses. And so we've bought that content from Content Anytime Library under Cornerstone as well. And then the additional costs are from the performance management and succession management. Again, things that we would have matured to, but we're including those in the contract now. So that's where the additional costs. But if you're talking about comparing apples to apples, the year-over-year cost of just the learning management system is approximately the same.
Okay, so thank you. So then I guess my last question is, should it be the same? Is it not a lot? Would it not be less expensive for a company to deliver these systems online than in person?
Sorry, what I was saying is the cost of the learning management system, of us having the licenses for the learning management system, is the same. So that's separate and apart from the cost of the courses that we're offering. So what I was referring to was the license cost. So that's not impacted by. So we were paying that license cost anyway, even when we had less content on the application, on the system. Now we're paying that, and I would argue we're getting more value for our money because there's even more people using it because more of our training is online.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Filion, you held this item. Would you like to speak to it?
No, I think thanks for the explanation. I guess I would just ask, and maybe it's just me, I am the furthest thing possible from a techie, but I do find some of these reports, just the way they're written, really difficult to comprehend. So I guess that's just a request in future. I also have a lot of trouble with the number of sole sourced and extensions and things we're doing. When you look at them individually, they seem to have a good rationale, but I am uncomfortable with the trend. However, I have no basis to say we shouldn't be doing this with this contract or some of the others that were on today's agenda. So I don't want to move it, but I don't have enough knowledge to have any real objection, that it may just be fine. I just find it difficult to provide sufficient oversight of some of these items.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Filion. Deputy Mayor Holliday to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I will move the report, if that's okay for the process in the meeting. And I would just echo Councillor Filion's comments that I often ask about single and sole source initiatives. And I would just say from my perspective as well, that the more detail about the business case around the move to sole source and to articulate the rationale, I think is just positive for transparency and members of the public that read this. I realize we've got a very big and busy operation, and it has definitely been impacted by COVID. And we've had to do some things with procurement that maybe we had not done in the past. But just the same, I think documenting these reasons is just a good process and a good component to the reports that we've got. And maybe I would just make that comment, and it's not specific to this particular report, but just in general is having a little bit more content on why we've chosen this particular direction is always helpful and healthy. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Holliday. Other speakers on this item? Seeing none. Okay. So we have the recommendations before us, and I just would like to acknowledge staff for all of their hard work, as I always jokingly say, kicking and dragging the city of Toronto into the 21st century. And I think this is another excellent example about how we're moving forward on our training and our technology management systems. I think the city's come a long way, not only during COVID, but pre-COVID. If you look at what we've been doing, even 5 years ago, for example, we've come a long way. So I want to thank all the staff that have been involved on this report as well. Thank you very much. So we do have the recommendation before us, moved by Deputy Mayor Holliday. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Matthew, I think that was our last item.
Mr. Chair, that was your last item. Just to confirm, we do not have any bylaws to move for this meeting. So you've completed your agenda.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the staff for the support this morning. It's very much appreciated by everybody on the committee. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Mantas, motion to adjourn. All in favor? That carries. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time this morning, and that of your staff. Please keep safe and well. And thank you to everybody in the clerk's department. Thank you.